So I put up a poll on X asking if the Catholic Church had become satanic, and 82% voted yes. This blew my mind. I realised there might be more to this than I thought. I knew there were eerie claims out there, but I decided to investigate it for myself. What I found was truly bizarre, and the deeper I went, the darker it got. This doesn't just get strange, it turns sinister. The Apocryphon of John is the most detailed surviving Gnostic creation text. Dated by papyrologists and paleographers to around 150 AD, it was considered so dangerous to the early church that bishops like Irenaeus tried to have it erased entirely, but it survived, sealed in a jar and buried in the arid hills of Upper Egypt, untouched for nearly 2,000 years until it was found near Nag Hammadi in 1945. And in it, the Gnostics warned that the faith was already being hijacked. They claimed the God being preached by bishops like Ignatius, who helped establish hierarchical church structure and first used the term Catholic Church, and Irenaeus, who sought to destroy Gnostic writings in his work against heresies, wasn't the true father at all, but an impostor. Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, a false creator who thought he was God. Beneath him were the Archon's rulers and enforcers like Saklas and Samael. So from the very beginning, something was wrong, and the ones warning us, the Gnostics, the mystics, the outcasts, they were buried in the desert, while the imposters built the empire. That's where the trail begins with deception. Even from the very beginning, there is evidence of pagan sun worship at the centre of the early church. The popular story is that Constantine had a miraculous vision of the Christian God and converted. But the actual evidence says something very different. According to Holy Blood, Holy Grail, Constantine's so-called conversion wasn't Christian at all, it was pagan. The deity he saw in his vision wasn't Christ, it was Sol Invictus, the Roman sun god. He'd already been initiated into the Sol cult before the vision and kept the title Pontifex Maximus, chief priest of Roman paganism, for the rest of his life. His Arch of Constantine, still standing in Rome, bears no Christian symbols whatsoever. Instead, it credits his military victory to the prompting of the deity, which historians widely agree refers to Sol Invictus, not Jesus. He continued to mint coins for years after his conversion that depicted Sol Invictus with a radiant crown, literally placing the sun god on imperial currency. This was state-sponsored sun worship, stamped and circulated across the empire. He later moved Christian worship to Sunday, aligning it with the sun god's sacred day, and fixed December 25th, the birthday of Sol Invictus, as the official date of Jesus' birth. These were deliberate moves to merge Roman paganism with the rising church. You don't need to believe in demons to see that what was being born wasn't a church, it was a mask. And behind the mask was the same sun god Rome had worshipped for centuries. So, while researching, I came across ancient texts that shocked me. Euripides' play, The Bacchae, and references from Isaiah 57 in the Old Testament, and what they describe is brutal. Before the Catholic Church even existed, there were cults devoted to gods like Dionysus, Adonis, and Attis. They were fertility gods, connected to resurrection myths, and their worship involved actual blood sacrifice or symbolic cannibalism. In the Bacchae, Dionysus' followers, the Bacchae would enter violent trance states, tear animals apart with their bare hands, and eat the raw flesh, believing they were taking in the god himself. Some later interpretations, particularly from early church fathers, like Clement of Alexandria, say children were the victims, dismembered alive in hidden mountain rituals. In Isaiah, it outright condemns those who slaughter your children in the valleys, which many believe was a reference to these exact cult practices. Coincidentally, the Eucharist, the centerpiece of Catholic worship,
is a ritual where believers eat the flesh and drink the blood of a sacrificed god. That's the same structure. A sacred meal, a blood rite, a god killed and consumed to grant power to his followers. So this wasn't just spiritual language, it was a direct continuation of something ancient, horrendous, and hidden in plain sight. Most people go their whole lives not knowing that the holiest Catholic ritual mirrors the most feared rites of ancient blood cults. And if that's true, then the church didn't destroy those old gods, it became them. The Eucharist is the centerpiece of Mass, and while it's cloaked in reverence and doctrine, the structure is identical: a sacred meal, a killing, and a divine consumption. But that's not all. I found something even darker. There are grimoires, actual books of black magic that were written in the names of popes. I'm not exaggerating. One of them is called the Grimoire of Pope Honorius. It's a 17th or 18th century manual of ritual magic, falsely attributed to Pope Honorius III, who ruled back in the 1200s. But the book is real, and it's one of the only grimoires ever created specifically for priests. And what it says is absolutely insane. It lays out instructions for performing a mass, but not to worship God, to summon demons. And not just that, it uses sacred church items, the host, the altar, holy water as magical tools to command the spirits of hell. There are full-blown conjurations using names like Tetragrammaton, Eloi, mixed in with lines like, "I command you to appear and serve the reader of this book, or suffer torments for 1,000 years. It tells you to perform the rite after drinking no wine, eating no meat, saying a Mass of the Holy Ghost, and then literally holding the host while summoning demons. It gets even sicker. The grimoire tells the priest to sacrifice a black cockerel at sunrise, tear out its eyes, tongue and heart, dry them in the sun, grind them into powder, and bury the corpse in a secret place under a cross. Then you're told to take the blood of Christ, the wine consecrated at Mass, and use it as ink to draw sigils to Satan on the altar, placing it alongside the host and a violet silk veil. This was feared enough to be connected to real historical crimes. The Grimoire of Honorius was linked to the affair of the poisons, a massive occult scandal in 17th century France, where nobles and priests were caught up in black masses, poisonings, and even sacrifice. One priest, allegedly connected to the grimoire, assassinated the Archbishop of Paris in 1857, according to some reports. And then there's the Enchiridion of Pope Leo, also falsely attributed to Pope Leo III, the same pope who crowned Charlemagne. This grimoire dates back to at least 1633 and begins with prayers of protection, but quickly shifts into a full method for making a pact with Satan. It uses church liturgy and imagery, candles, crosses, blessings, but warps it into a magical system soaked in Neoplatonic occultism, seals, and talismans. Even Eliphas Levi, one of the most well-known occultists of the 19th century, said that while these books were clever impostures, they were dangerous because ignorant priests might believe in them and accidentally invoke demonic powers. So what does that tell you? These weren't hidden. They weren't secret scrolls in the hands of fringe cults. These were grimoires created in the name of popes, using the structure and symbols of the Catholic Mass to conjure spirits from hell. And they weren't just theoretical, they were connected to real-world black masses, murder plots, and occult crime. The same tools used in every Catholic church, the altar, the vestments, the holy water, the wine, the bread, were written into spells to summon demons. That's not Christianity, it's sorcery. And the fact that it wore a mitre and called itself holy makes it even worse. There have been whistleblowers, like former Vatican insider Malachi Martin, that something far more disturbing took place behind closed doors. In Windswept House, he describes a real-life satanic ritual conducted inside the Vatican itself, the so-called enthronement of Lucifer, performed in the Chapel of St. Paul on June 29, 1963. Martin insisted this was not fiction, but an account of actual events. In his words, "By the power invested in me as parallel celebrant of the sacrifice and the parallel fulfiller of the enthronement, I lead all here and in Rome in invoking you, Prince of all creatures. Come, take possession of the enemy's house, descend among your faithful servitors, who have erected your altar and blessed it with infamy." According to the novel, high-ranking clergy conducted the Mass using a reversed altar, swore oaths to Lucifer, and symbolically handed over the papal crown, the triple tiara, to the Prince of Darkness. Black candles, pentagrams, cloaked participants. It reads like a horror film, but Martin insisted it was real. And it gets worse. Martin even described a young girl, Agnes, said to be based on real survivor testimony, who was subjected to horrifying abuse during the ritual. She was taken by force in the presence of fire, black robes, and inverted prayers, right there on what should have been a sacred altar. This was ritual abuse allegedly committed inside the Vatican by those entrusted with spiritual authority. And yet there's more. Researcher Peter Lavender, in his Sinister Forces trilogy, picks up where Martin left off. He documents the existence of what Martin called the Superforce, a hidden network of bishops and cardinals responsible for financial corruption, ritual abuse, and satanic rites within the church itself. Lavender writes, Martin also alleged that there existed within the church something he called the Superforce, a hidden cabal operating inside the Vatican, responsible not just for political and financial corruption, but for disturbing ritual abuse and exploitation scandals. Some, he claimed, were masked under religious ceremony and cloaked in satanic symbolism. This is about corruption and ritual power. A valid ordination is one of the most singular sources of spiritual strength in the West. A priest possesses the power to create more: holy water, holy oil, a consecrated host. These can be used for either sacred or profane magic, and in multiple documented cases, ordained Catholic priests were found at the centre of black masses as secret operators, using its tools, wearing its robes. Lavender sums it up bluntly. A priest has immediate access to all of this and possesses the power to create more, giving the ritual that much more authority. And still, the Eucharist continues, a ritual that no one questions its origins, but when you line it up with the ancient rites of Dionysus, Attis, and Adonis, with the child sacrifices condemned by the prophets, and with ritual abuse in the modern Vatican, and you have to ask, is this a sacred tradition, or a mask stretched over something far older and far darker? Eliphas Levi explicitly states in Dogme et Rituel de la Haute Magie, which was published in 2 volumes between 1854 and 1856, that Catholic priests still follow a specific magical rule, wearing 2 contrasting vestments, one over the other, a requirement in ceremonial magic for balancing opposing forces. He writes, all magical instruments must be duplicated: 2 swords, 2 wands, 2 cups, 2 vestments must be worn, one over the other, and they must be of contrasted colours, a rule still followed by Catholic priests. Eliphas Levi, Dogme et Rituel de la Haute Magie. But here's what makes this damning, rather than just interesting. In ceremonial magic, duality is foundational. It represents the union of opposing forces, light and dark, good and evil, spirit and flesh. When a Catholic priest wears 2 layered robes of opposing colours while performing the Mass, he's unknowingly enacting the same principles used in magical evocation and summoning rituals. So where did this originate? Ancient magical rites recorded in grimoires like the Clavicles of Solomon and the Enchiridion of Pope Leo III, which were considered dangerous enough to be banned or hidden. These rituals involved invoking planetary spirits
conjuring angelic or demonic entities, and balancing divine and infernal forces. Catholic priests continuing these clothing rituals is carryover from ritual magic with occult intent baked into the symbolism. This is what makes it dark. It's an unbroken magical formula for spiritual manipulation. One that was never meant for Christian worship. And yet, it's still there. Hidden in plain sight, layered on every priest who steps up to the altar, duplicating the same garments worn by sorcerers and magicians for centuries to balance energies and command spirits. This is magical, inverted, concealed, and inherited from a darker entity that never died. And to be honest, I've got another whole section sitting here that goes even more in depth. It covers the Pistis Sophia, the Gospel of Judas, and a totally different version of Jesus. One where he laughs at the apostles, rejects the Eucharist, and gives secret knowledge to Mary Magdalene and Judas while warning that the God being worshipped isn't his father at all. But the video's already 17 minutes long. So we'll save that for part 2. This isn't even the half of it. I've only scratched the surface. There are entire libraries of texts, rituals, symbols, eyewitness accounts, papal documents, and forbidden books that take this even further. But I can't cover it all in one video, so we'll come back to it. What really is the Catholic Church? A sanctuary of light, or a throne built on lies, blood, and illusion? You decide.